I remember the day everything shifted for me. It was 3 years ago, an otherwise ordinary afternoon when a single glance through the sliver of a half-open door revealed a truth that would forever split my life into before and after. Before, I was just a normal 13-year-old, living in a house on a peaceful street where neighbors greeted each other from driveways and mothers invited each other for afternoon tea. After, I had a secret so heavy it felt like it could crush me. We live in a modest 2-story home at the end of a cul-de-sac. My father, Arun, wakes up before dawn, drives to the bakery he owns downtown, and works long hours kneading dough and managing orders. My mother, Maya, used to teach art part-time at a local community center, but for the past few years she's stayed home, only occasionally taking on small freelance projects. Anyone looking in from the outside would see a normal middle-class family. On that day 3 years ago, I heard soft laughter drifting down the hallway near my mother's art room. Thinking nothing of it, I went to find her. Maybe she was on the phone or chatting with a friend who dropped by. Mom was a social person, always exchanging messages with neighbors, so hearing her voice wasn't strange. But what followed was a hush, and then I heard a low male voice. The sound made me stop in my tracks. Dad was at the bakery, so who could be in there with her? My curiosity got the better of me, and I crept closer. The door was cracked open just enough for me to see a silhouette standing very close to my mother. At first, I didn't understand. Maybe Dad had come home early? But no, the man with her was tall and broad-shouldered, with hair cut close to his scalp. Someone else entirely. He was our neighbor, Kamal. I recognized him even from that limited angle. He lived 2 houses down with his wife and 2 young daughters. As my heart drummed in my chest, I watched him place his hand on my mother's arm, and then she leaned forward in a way I'd never seen before, intimate, trusting, almost loving. In hushed whispers they spoke. I didn't catch much besides her gentle laughter and him murmuring, "I can't stay too long." Suddenly, I felt I was seeing something I was never meant to see. I started to back away, my pulse roaring in my ears. But then the door squeaked beneath the weight of my hand. I froze in terror, imagining them whipping around and finding me spying. Instead, the laughter inside the room stopped. My mother said, "Did you hear something?" I didn't wait to find out. I turned on my heel and bolted down the hallway, up the stairs, and into my room, quietly shutting the door behind me. My heart hammered so hard that I pressed my palm against my chest to calm it. My mind reeled with 1,000 questions, but one fact shone through them all like a neon sign. My mother was cheating on my father. It was from that moment on that I kept a secret tucked away in my heart, a secret that I carried for 3 years. I never told Dad. How could I? He's the kindest man I know, waking up early every day to provide for us, always quick with a warm smile. I couldn't bear to be the one to destroy that image he had of our family. 3 years later, a lot can change in 3 years. At 16, I'm taller, my voice a bit deeper, and I have new responsibilities. I help Dad on weekends at the bakery, putting out pastries, wiping down tables, greeting customers. Mom doesn't teach anymore. She's often at home, painting or planning new art classes that never seem to materialize, or on her phone. That phone is practically another limb for her. She never puts it down. She's on it in the morning when I come downstairs, typing away with a little smile on her face. She's on it at night when Dad and I are sitting on the couch watching the news or a soccer match, and she'll be in the corner half listening but mostly scrolling, texting, or glancing up only to say MHM, in response to something Dad asked. I still remember the first few times I realized it wasn't just Kamal she was talking to. I would walk by and see unfamiliar names on her screen. I recognized some from Dad's circle, his friends even. My stomach would twist. How far did these connections go? It began innocently enough. I assumed she was just being friendly, but over time I've seen the messages she tries to hide. She angles her phone away the second I walk in, a forced smile on her face. I'm not oblivious. I'm not a kid who wanders around unaware of adult matters. If anything, learning the truth so early forced me to grow up faster. And now it's gotten so much worse. Mom is not just one secret lover, but multiple. Maybe they're not all full-blown affairs the way she's been with Kamal, but from the messages I've glimpsed, it's emotional, even suggestive. Some of these men are married, some have children. One or two are Dad's longtime friends, people who come over for cricket matches or call him by out of camaraderie. It's sickening. Most nights, I lie awake, my mind churning with anxiety and guilt. Why haven't I told Dad? That question haunts me. Every time I try to gather the courage, I imagine the look on Dad's face, the heartbreak, the betrayal. It tears me apart. So I keep quiet. It's a sweltering summer day when a new wave of suspicion hits me. Dad and I work the early shift at the bakery. By noon, he's letting me off so I can go home, shower, maybe meet friends if I want. He stays behind to handle the after-lunch crowd and finish up around 4 p.m. The daily routine seldom changes. When I step through the front door of our house, the air conditioning blasts me, and the distinct smell of Mom's floral air freshener, a little too sweet, hits my nose. Mom! I call out, half hoping she won't answer, because sometimes that means she's out running errands. Then I can snoop around without feeling guilty. But today, I hear her voice floating from the kitchen. In here, she responds. I leave my shoes by the door, set my backpack down, and walk toward the sound. Mom stands by the counter, chopping vegetables. She glances up with a quick, tight-lipped smile that doesn't reach her eyes. On the table is her phone face down, as if she placed it hastily the moment she heard me. How was the bakery? She asks, pushing chopped onions into a bowl. Busy, I say. Dad's still there. Always the busy one, she comments, but I hear a slight edge in her voice. It's not the usual complaint about Dad's hours. There's something else, a frustration that's grown in her over the years. It's so hot out. There's cold lemon water in the fridge if you want. I nod, open the fridge, and pour myself a glass. The lemonade is tart and refreshing. As I take a sip, I notice her gaze flick toward the phone on the table. She's worried about something. The screen is dark, but I can sense the tension in the room, like she's waiting for me to leave so she can resume her text conversations. Is everything okay? I ask, deciding to test the waters. She nods too quickly. Yes, of course. Just lots on my mind. Like what? She doesn't meet my eyes, busying herself with the vegetables. I have some, art pieces I'm finishing up. Deadlines, you know? I do know. They're not real deadlines. She hasn't taken on a paid project in weeks. Maybe she's just got personal paintings. Or maybe it's all an excuse. I take my glass of lemon water and head to my room. As I'm leaving, I glance over my shoulder. She snatches up her phone almost the instant I've turned away and begins to tap furiously at the screen. In my room, I close the door and sink onto my bed. A wave of exhaustion hits me, a tiredness in my bones that has little to do with standing at the bakery all morning. It's the mental fatigue of carrying secrets. I scroll through social media for a while, but my mind isn't in it. That's when I decide I'll check on her phone if she leaves it unattended, just to know who she's talking to so incessantly. An idea forms. Maybe if I know who these men are and gather proof, I can what? Expose her? Blackmail her? No, that's not me. But something about having tangible evidence might make me feel less helpless. Maybe it'll help me make a decision about telling Dad. Mom occasionally leaves her phone behind when she goes to shower or put laundry away. I wait for that moment. Hours pass. She's suspicious. She used to leave it lying around the house, but now it never leaves her side. She goes upstairs to put away folded clothes, and I follow. She sets the laundry basket in the hallway, phone in her pocket. No luck. She's humming some tune, walking from room to room. Then, in the late afternoon, she calls out, I'm going to take a shower. For a brief second, my pulse kicks up. Her phone remains in the living room, I discover, plugged in to charge near the couch. The water starts running in the upstairs bathroom. My hands are cold, my heart racing. I creep into the living room and find her phone. It's locked, of course. She's had a password for a while, a quick 4-digit PIN. I think about what I've seen her punch in occasionally, some pattern of numbers. She's changed it a few times over the years, but I'll try the older codes. I press the home button and enter 1729. Denied. My stomach swoops. I try 0204, Dad's birthday. Denied. One more attempt before I risk locking it. I recall something. Once months ago, I glimpsed her phone screen from the side. The code started with a 5. 5234, maybe? I enter 5234, and to my relief, the phone unlocks. I'm in. I can hear the distant hum of the shower upstairs, water hitting tile. I have minutes at best. Quickly, I open her messages app. The names that pop up twist my stomach. Kamal, of course. Rajan, who is one of Dad's good friends from his college days. Vishal, another acquaintance of Dad's. And the list continues with more names I don't recognize. Some might be men from the neighborhood or random contacts she's added. Opening Kamal's thread, I scroll to see the latest messages. Kamal, I miss you. Are you free this evening? Maya, Mom, not sure. Arun is home. Maybe tomorrow. Don't forget the plan. My eyes skim further up. There are innuendos, short confessions of longing, mentions of meeting places. It's not just a fling. There's an intimacy and familiarity in the way they speak. They have some plan I don't fully understand. My heart clenches. I move to Rajan's thread. The messages are even more disturbing. Rajan, we need to be careful at the get-together next week. Arun can't suspect a thing. Maya, Mom, he won't. I'll act normal. But you need to keep your distance if you see Kamal around. I swallow hard. Rajan as well? That's Dad's closest friend. He's come over so many times, laughing, bringing sweets, joking about old memories. And the whole time, he's had something going on with my mother? My head spins. I glance up at the staircase, half expecting to see her standing there, dripping wet and furious, having caught me. But the shower is still on. I feel a sudden need to check something else, her photos, her call logs, anything. I tap on the gallery, flipping through random pictures of recipes, her paintings, screenshots of text conversations she might have saved for blackmail or something. My breathing feels shallow. I notice a set of selfies of her with Kamal in a car, him leaning close to her, both smiling in broad daylight. Another of them in what looks like a cheap motel room, with curtains drawn. My stomach churns. I realize this is bigger and deeper than I imagined. Before I can delve further, the shower cuts off. Panicked, I close the apps and carefully set the phone on the charger exactly as I found it. My heart is pounding so loudly that it's almost painful. I hustle out of the living room and up the stairs, feeling adrenaline spike every step of the way. In my room, I press my ear to the door, hearing the creak of Mom stepping out of the bathroom and patting down the hallway. For a moment, I'm consumed by the image of Dad, naive to all of this, working at the bakery, trusting his wife implicitly. Then I think of Kamal's wife, of Rajan's wife, of their kids, my father's friends, for God's sake. How many marriages is Mom playing with? I slump onto my bed, the entire world spinning. I want to cry, but I also feel a kind of helpless rage that's unfamiliar to me. A question burns through the chaos. What do I do now? Dad comes home around 5 p.m., sweaty and tired. He's carrying a box of leftover pastries from the bakery, sets them on the kitchen table, and kisses Mom lightly on the cheek in greeting. I watch her reaction closely. She smiles as though nothing is wrong, adopting a perfect housewife persona in front of him. I sit at the table, nibbling on a pastry, my mind lost in the storm of revelations from earlier. Dad doesn't notice my mood initially. He's recounting the day's events, We got a huge order from that new cafe near the hospital. Could be a permanent contract if they like our bread. Isn't that great, Maya? She nods enthusiastically, though I see her sideways glance at her phone, which is back in her hand. That's wonderful, she says. Let's celebrate with a nice dinner, hmm? She sets her phone aside for a moment and starts pulling out ingredients. Dad, exhausted, goes to wash up. I help chop some vegetables, half listening to Mom's instructions. It's surreal watching her move around the kitchen, humming, her face a picture of domestic calm, knowing the avalanche of secrets in her phone. My mind replays Kamal's messages, Rajan's warnings about being careful. The tension is like static in the air. When Dad returns and we sit down to eat, the conversation feels forced. Dad is too worn out to notice, but I pick at my food, pushing curry around my plate. Mom tries to lighten the mood, describing a new painting she started. Dad, always supportive, responds politely, but he's not one for art, so he mostly just nods and says, "That's nice." Occasionally, Mom glances at me, her eyes narrowing. I wonder if she suspects I've looked at her phone. She's definitely on edge. Every time her screen lights up from where it sits on the counter, she flicks her gaze to it. Once or twice, she stands up to check a message, then comes back to the table. Dad notices that. Something important, Maya? She shrugs, slipping the phone into her pocket. Just a friend asking about an art class. She lies. I'll handle it later. He doesn't press. He's always been the type to respect people's privacy, especially hers. That's precisely what makes this so unfair. Mom is exploiting his trust. My fork clenches in my hand, and I force myself to swallow the anger brewing in me. After dinner, Dad volunteers to do the dishes. He says he likes the meditative clinking of plates under the warm water, a small act of love. Mom grabs her phone and walks upstairs, saying she needs to take a quick call about that art class. I slump in a dining chair, guilt gnawing at me. I see Dad at the sink, his back turned, humming an old song under his breath. I can almost imagine telling him right now about what I found. But then I picture his face, the heartbreak, the inevitable confrontation with Mom. I remain silent. That night, I'm in my room, scrolling mindlessly on my phone, eyes flicking between text messages with my friends and the door. Around 10 p.m., Dad is already yawning on the couch, so he goes to bed. Mom stays up, phone pressed to her ear as she stands on the back porch. The glass door is closed, but I can see her silhouette through the curtains, occasionally pacing, occasionally leaning against the railing. She's talking softly, probably to Kamal or Rajan. My stomach churns again. I watch her from the staircase. She waves a mosquito away, then lowers her voice even further. I can't make out the words. Eventually, she comes inside, locks the back door, and heads upstairs. I dart back to my room before she sees me lurking in the shadows. In bed, I stare at the ceiling. The whir of the ceiling fan blends with the muffled sounds of night. This house feels alive with secrets. Every silence is loaded. Every sound of a notification could be another piece of betrayal. I toss and turn, my thoughts swirling around the day's discoveries. How long can this go on before Dad notices? Because Dad has to notice. He's not a fool. Maybe he's in denial, or maybe he doesn't see the signs because he trusts her so fully. My heart aches for him. Sometimes, I resent him for being so absent, for not seeing what's right in front of his face. But Dad's hardworking. That's the only crime I can pin on him. He devotes himself to the bakery to make sure Mom and I never want for anything. I eventually drift into a restless sleep, haunted by the knowledge that my mother's secrets run deeper and darker than I'd ever imagined. The following day, I wake up to the smell of brewing coffee. Mom is up early, which is unusual. She rarely joins Dad for breakfast these days. I shuffle downstairs in my pajamas to find her at the kitchen table, phone in one hand, coffee mug in the other. Dad is on the couch, tying his shoelaces for work. He glances up at me. "Morning, kiddo," he says with a half-smile. He looks bleary-eyed. Maybe he didn't sleep well. "Morning, Dad," I reply, heading to the kitchen to grab a glass of milk. Mom, sipping her coffee, says, "We're out of cereal. Maybe you can pick some up on your way home." She's addressing me, but her eyes flick to Dad as if gauging his reaction. Dad nods. "Yeah, we need a few groceries. Actually, Maya, I was thinking maybe we could go together after I close the bakery today. You could pick out what you want." She hesitates. "Oh, I might be busy." She glances at me, then adds, "A friend wants me to come over for a painting session." Dad's face falls just slightly, but he tries to hide it. "Sure, no problem," he says. "I'll handle it." I watch this exchange in silence, the tension palpable. Mom finishes her coffee, stands, and walks upstairs without another word. Dad sits there for a moment, elbows on his knees, head bowed. He looks tired of something that maybe he doesn't fully understand. A pang of guilt hits me. He deserves to know. But how do I break it to him? Just as Dad is about to leave, I walk with him to the door, holding the bag of pastries he wants to deliver to a nearby cafe. On an impulse, I say, "Dad, can I ask you something?" He slings his bag over his shoulder. "Sure, what's up?" I hesitate, my mouth dry. The words are right there. "Mom is cheating on you with Kamal and some of your friends." But all I manage is, "Are you okay? You seem a little stressed." He forces a smile, though it doesn't quite reach his eyes. "Just thinking about the bakery finances. We're doing okay, but it's always a lot of pressure. Don't worry about me, all right? I'm fine." I nod, and he steps out. "Bye, kiddo," he calls over his shoulder. Then he's gone. I stand on the porch, watching him walk to the car. My heart feels heavy, weighed down by the words left unspoken. Sometimes I wonder if Dad can sense that something is off, but is too afraid to confront it. Mom heads out around noon, dressed in a casual blouse and jeans, claiming she's going to see a friend. I have the house to myself. I try to distract myself by doing a bit of laundry, cleaning my room, and finishing up some summer homework. The hours pass slowly, and the oppressive heat outside only intensifies the claustrophobic feeling in my chest. Around 2:30 p.m., the doorbell rings. Surprised, I head downstairs. When I open the door, I find Kamal standing on our porch, wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses. Immediately, my heart races. He's never come here so openly, at least not that I've observed in the last few years. Hi, I manage. "Hey," he says, looking a bit taken aback to see me. Then he forces a grin. "Your mother's not home?" I fold my arms, trying to seem nonchalant while adrenaline surges through me. "She stepped out," I say curtly. He checks his phone, furrows his brow. "She told me to come by around now." The gall. For a split second, I'm speechless. They actually arranged a meeting here in broad daylight? I want to slam the door in his face, but I hold back. "Well, she's not here," I repeat, glaring at him. He looks uncomfortable. Shifting from one foot to the other, he attempts a friendly tone. "How are you anyway? All grown up these days." I can't help the flash of anger. "Yeah, thanks," I mutter, stepping back. "I don't know when she'll be back." He hesitates, glancing over my shoulder into the house, as though considering if he should wait inside. But I make no move to invite him in. My posture, my expression, everything screams, "Go away." After a beat, he clears his throat. "I'll just call her," he mumbles, turning to go. He walks down the steps, phone in hand. I slam the door and lean my head against it, breathing hard. I feel a wave of disgust, both at him and at my mother for orchestrating such a blatant rendezvous. It's not just a hidden affair anymore. It's brash, out in the open, something they almost flaunt while Dad is working his tail off at the bakery. In that moment, something shifts inside me. I've spent years feeling helpless, letting the guilt and dread sink in. But if Mom is becoming so reckless, how long before Dad finds out in the worst way possible? How long before the entire neighborhood knows? I can't let him be blindsided. He may hate me for telling him, but it's better he knows from me than to stumble upon them or hear it from gossip. I march to the living room, sinking into the couch. My mind churns with options. Telling Dad directly. How? A letter? A text? Face to face? The thought terrifies me, imagining the heartbreak in his eyes. Another approach might be confronting Mom, demanding she come clean or else I will. But do I have the stomach for that confrontation? The house feels too big, too empty. I wonder if Dad will come home early for once, if I can gather the courage as soon as he walks in. But the hours tick by, and neither Mom nor Dad returns. Occasionally, I look out the window, half expecting Kamal's car or someone else's to show up. The tension is suffocating. Finally, around 4:30 p.m., Mom gets home. She breezes in, keys jingling, and spots me on the couch. She looks startled, like she didn't expect to see me. "Oh, hi," she says, forcing a smile. "What are you up to?" I bristle at her casual tone. "Nothing," I say flatly. "Kamal dropped by." Her face freezes. "He did?" "Yeah, about 2 hours ago. Said you told him to come." She averts her gaze, clutching her keys. "Oh, that he must have misunderstood." There's a slight tremor in her voice. I stare at her. "You know, it's risky, him coming here like that." Her eyes snap to mine. "What do you mean by that?" I can't hide my anger. "Mom, I'm not an idiot. I've known about you and Kamal for years. Don't treat me like I don't see what's going on." She sets her purse down, her expression darkening. "Watch your tone," she says in a low voice. "This is not your business." My chest tightens, tears of frustration prickling at the corners of my eyes. Not my business? Dad is my family. You're my family. Of course it's my business. Mom steps closer, whispering fiercely, "Don't you dare speak about this to your father. Do you understand? You have no idea what's going on between us." I let out a humorless laugh. "I know enough," I say, voice trembling. "I know about Kamal. About Rajan. Maybe others too. Just stop." Her face goes pale. "What do you mean, Rajan?" I feel a burst of shame that I've revealed I've snooped on her phone, but I push on. "I saw your messages. I've seen everything. How could you do this?" For a long moment, she just stares at me, breathing heavily. Then she says, "Listen to me. Your father works too much. I'm lonely. This is complicated. You're just a kid. There are things you don't understand about marriage." "That's not an excuse to betray him with multiple men," I snap. Her eyes fill with tears, and for a moment I think I see a flash of guilt, maybe even self-loathing. But she hardens. "Do not say a word to him or I swear." "What? You'll kick me out? You'll deny it?" My voice breaks. "You can't stop me from telling him. I'm done pretending." With that, I turn on my heel and run upstairs to my room, tears blurring my vision. Behind me, Mom calls my name, but I ignore her. I slam my door, hearing my own heartbeat drumming in my ears. My breath comes in ragged gasps. What have I done? I've just confronted her, threatened to reveal her secrets. There's no going back now. I drop onto my bed, tears streaming down my cheeks. My mind replays our brief confrontation, the look on her face, fear, anger, and a strange desperation. I half expect her to come barging in and scream at me, but she doesn't. The hallway remains silent. I know this is only the beginning. My quiet house, full of secrets, is on the brink of exploding. And the question that hammers in my head is, how much longer until everything shatters? I wake up the following day feeling like there's a lead weight in my chest. My confrontation with Mom the previous afternoon replays in my head. The anger in her eyes, the quiver in her voice as she hissed at me not to tell Dad. I roll over and see sunlight streaming through a gap in my curtains. The clock on my nightstand reads 7:40 a.m. Normally, Dad would be gone by now, already at the bakery, preparing dough in the pre-dawn hours. Mom would be downstairs sipping coffee. But after yesterday's blow-up, I don't know what to expect. The silence in the house feels unnatural, as though everyone is holding their breath. I sit up, heart pounding at the memory of the words I threw at Mom. You can't stop me from telling him. I'm done pretending. I'd never spoken to her like that before, and I never imagined she'd look so panicked, so desperate. Part of me wanted to feel triumphant that she was finally scared, forced to acknowledge the damage she's doing. But mostly I just felt sick. Slowly, I swing my legs off the bed and get dressed in my usual jeans and a t-shirt. When I ease my door open, the hallway is empty, no sign of Mom. I tiptoe downstairs. The house is eerily quiet. Sunlight pours through the living room windows, casting bright squares on the floor. As I make my way to the kitchen, I notice 2 coffee mugs on the counter. One is Dad's usual ceramic mug with "World's Best Father" printed on it. The other is Mom's floral cup, still half full, lipstick staining the rim. Next to them, Dad's phone rests face down, a rare sight. He rarely leaves it lying around. I glance around. The sink is piled with a few breakfast dishes. Perhaps Mom and Dad already spoke this morning. Tension coils in my stomach. Did she tell him I threatened to expose her? My mind runs wild. I listen for voices, but only the hum of the refrigerator responds. Suddenly, the back door slides open, and Dad steps inside from our small backyard. He looks surprised to see me. "Morning," he says, removing his gardening gloves. He must have been checking on the rose bushes he planted last year. "I thought you'd still be asleep." I swallow hard, noticing faint shadows under his eyes. "Morning, Dad. Everything okay?" He gives me a gentle half-smile, but it doesn't quite convince me. "Yeah, I'm good. Your Mom and I were just talking." He rubs a hand over his face, as if to wipe away tension. "She left for a walk. Said she needed some air." A walk. Right. That's new. Mom isn't exactly the outdoorsy type. I can guess she probably needed space after our confrontation, or after whatever discussion she just had with Dad. "Okay," I say neutrally. "Are you heading to the bakery soon?" He nods, reaching for his phone. "Yeah, but I'm starting a bit later today. Wanted to see if I could do a few chores at home first. The new employees can handle the early morning setup." He hesitates, then adds, "Your Mom and I had a bit of an argument last night." My breath catches in my throat. This is the first time Dad has ever mentioned any serious fight with Mom. Usually, they have quiet disagreements, like over what color to paint the walls, or how much time he spends at the bakery. But it's always mild. The real issues, like her affairs, remain hidden. "Everything okay?" I ask, trying not to tremble. He looks at me, eyes searching. "I'm not sure." He sighs. "She said she feels lonely, like we don't spend enough time together." And she seemed on edge. More than usual. I bite my lip, conflicted. Is this my chance to say something? My heart pounds. But something in his face, worn, sad, stops me. I worry that dropping the truth now might be too harsh a blow. So I swallow the words. "I'm sure you two can work it out." I mumble, the lie sour in my mouth. Dad nods, and for a fleeting moment, I see relief in his features. Maybe he's grateful I'm not pressing. "I hope so," he says softly. An hour later, I'm scrolling on my phone in the living room, half watching an old TV show rerun, when the front door opens. Mom walks in, looking flushed from the heat outside. She wears her hair in a low ponytail, and sweat beads along her forehead. She stiffens when she sees me. We lock eyes. For an instant, neither of us speaks. Then she kicks off her shoes. "Good morning," she says, her tone guarded. "Morning," I reply, my voice just as cool. She busies herself in the kitchen, refilling her water bottle and sipping it slowly, as though stalling. Finally, without looking at me, she says, "Where's your father?" "In the shower, I think. He's heading to the bakery soon." I watch her reaction carefully. searching for any sign that she told him about our fight or that she's planning to do something drastic. She nods, sips more water. Her expression is distant. I steel myself and decide to speak. Did you talk to Dad about what happened between us yesterday? She sets the glass down. I told him we argued because I felt neglected. That's all he needs to know. My jaw clenches. He asked me if everything was okay. I didn't tell him anything, but keep it that way, she snaps, turning to glare at me. I meant what I said. Don't involve yourself in things you don't understand. I stand up from the couch, anger flaring again. Things I don't understand? I'm not a child. I understand enough to see you're hurting Dad. Her eyes narrow, and she lowers her voice. No, you don't. This family, my marriage, is complicated. You only see black and white. You think your father is a perfect man who does no wrong, but you haven't lived my life. She exhales shakily. I won't justify myself to you. Just stay out of it. Before I can respond, Dad emerges from the hallway, hair damp, in fresh clothes. He senses the tension at once. Everything okay? He asks, voice tentative. We both scramble to act normal. Mom forces a smile. Yes, I was just telling our child here that I'm going to run a few errands. Dad looks between us, uncertainty plain on his face. Then he sighs. All right. I was thinking of closing the bakery early tonight. Maybe we can have a movie night or order takeout. That sounds nice, Mom says, not quite meeting his gaze. Text me if you need anything. Then she heads upstairs, presumably to shower or change. Dad lingers, giving me a questioning look. I shrug, not trusting myself to speak. After a moment, he grabs his keys and steps out. I'm left in the hush of the house, tension simmering just beneath the surface. Later that afternoon, my phone buzzes. I'm halfway through a half-hearted attempt at finishing my summer reading assignment when I check the screen. It's a text message from an unknown number. Unknown. Hey, it's Rajan. Mind if I ask you something? My pulse spikes. Rajan has never texted me directly before. He usually contacts Dad if he needs something. Why is he messaging me? I glance around as though someone might be watching over my shoulder. Then I type a cautious reply, me. Hi. Sure. A moment later, the reply comes in fast. Rajan, everything okay at home? Your mom mentioned you've been upset. I feel a surge of anger. So Mom has been confiding in Rajan, her other secret fling, about me. My fingers hover over the keyboard, trembling with adrenaline. I type, me. I'm fine. Why are you asking me this? He starts typing back. The three little dots bounce for a moment, and then, Rajan, she said you might think something's going on with her. Like you're misunderstanding things. I just want to make sure you're not worried. I clench my jaw. So that's it. Mom is using Rajan as an ally. She knows I've seen the messages, so she probably reached out to him, told him some half-baked story about me getting the wrong idea. And now he's trying to calm me down or manipulate me. I consider ignoring him, but the temptation to confront him is strong. My mind flashes to the disgusting texts I read between him and Mom. Him warning her to keep distance around Kamal. Him implying they've been physically intimate or at least emotionally involved. My stomach churns. Me? I know about you and my mom, Rajan. Don't treat me like a kid. He doesn't reply immediately. 5 seconds pass. Then 10. 15. I tap my foot, eyes glued to the screen. Finally, the typing dots reappear. Rajan, you don't know anything. Your mom and I are just friends. I'm only saying this for your good and for Arun's. Don't create drama over nothing. I let out a shaky breath. He's doubling down, lying directly to my face. Or phone, rather. My frustration mounts. I type one last message, me. If you really care about my dad, you'd stop whatever you're doing with Mom. Then I mute the conversation. I don't want to see any more of his gaslighting or fake concern. My heart hammers as I toss the phone onto my bed. This is getting real. Rajan is actively trying to manipulate me. If he's reached out, who's next? Kamal? Some other men? My mother's entire twisted network? I force myself to breathe. All the guilt and anger swirl inside me like a storm. When I first learned about Mom's affair with Kamal, I felt like an unwilling witness to a tragedy. Now, I'm stepping onto a battlefield with multiple adversaries. It's not just my mother's betrayal. Her lovers are actively pulling strings to protect their secrets, and they see me as a threat. I open my bedroom window to let in some fresh air. Our backyard is still and quiet, the afternoon sun blazing over the fence. I think of Dad at the bakery, oblivious to these battles being fought in his own home. It isn't fair. My phone chimes again. Against my better judgment, I look at the screen. Rajan, one new message. I told myself I was done, but curiosity and anger make me open it. Rajan, look, this is between me and Maya. Don't make it bigger than it is. Focus on your own life. Arun will be better off not knowing. Families fall apart over small misunderstandings. Just let it go. I toss the phone onto the bed once more, a wave of nausea rolling over me. He's threatening that if I talk, I'll be responsible for families falling apart. The audacity, the blame shifting infuriates me. You're the one who's betraying my father, I want to scream. Not me. By late afternoon, I'm at my desk, struggling to concentrate on anything else. The front door opens, and Dad's voice calls out, I'm home. I step out of my room to greet him. Mom appears as well, coming out of the art room. They exchange a glance, strained, but polite, and Dad musters a smile. I closed up a bit early, just like I said. How about that movie night? My eyes flick to Mom. She nods stiffly. Sure, she says. I could use a break. Dad brightens, but something about his smile doesn't quite reach his eyes. All right, let me just wash up and we can decide what to order for dinner. As he disappears into the bathroom, Mom and I stand awkwardly in the hallway, the tension between us almost suffocating. I can tell she's on edge. She glances at me, as if to say, don't mess this up. Then she heads to the kitchen without a word. Part of me wants to tell Dad right now, but fear paralyzes me, fear of being the one to detonate this bomb. Instead, I hover near the door until he comes out, drying his face on a towel. Ready, he asks, trying for a cheerful tone. Sure, I say, forcing a smile of my own. We gather in the living room. Mom takes the armchair, phone set carefully on the side table. Dad and I sit on the couch. He flips through streaming service options on the TV, looking for a movie. Mom barely glances up, fiddling with her phone's lock screen. My stomach knots. Maybe she's waiting for a message from Kamal or Rajan. Or maybe she's blocking them so Dad won't see a pop-up. Dad finally settles on a light comedy film. This one's about an underdog sports team that overcomes obstacles. Maybe we could all use something upbeat, he jokes. I offer him a small grin. Mom just nods, crossing her legs and staring at the screen. As the movie starts, tension hangs in the air. Dad tries to lighten the mood with a few comments, but Mom responds with half-hearted chuckles. I barely pay attention to the plot. Instead, I study Dad's face in the flickering glow of the TV. He's smiling, but every so often, a flicker of worry crosses his features, as if he senses something is deeply wrong. Midway through the movie, Mom's phone buzzes on the table. We all tense. She snatches it up instantly, pressing a button to silence it. Dad lifts an eyebrow. Everything okay? He asks. She forces a casual shrug. Just a friend, she says. I'll call them back later. Dad frowns slightly, but nods. The phone buzzes again. This time, Mom taps it hurriedly, ignoring Dad's gaze. A wave of tension flushes through me. I can practically see the gears turning in Dad's mind. Why does she seem so flustered? He returns his attention to the movie, but I see his jaw tighten. He's not oblivious. He's noticing, maybe not the full extent, but something is off, and he knows it. The movie ends. Mom mumbles about heading upstairs to read before bed. Dad and I remain on the couch, the credits rolling. A weighty silence settles between us. Eventually, he speaks softly, not looking at me. Have you noticed anything different about your mother lately? Every muscle in my body tenses. Like what? I manage stalling. He exhales, rubbing his temples. She's on her phone a lot. She's distracted, secretive. She accuses me of being absent, but lately, it feels like she's the absent one. He lifts his gaze to mine. I'm worried about her. Guilt and pity twist inside me. I swallow hard. Maybe she's just stressed, I offer. With her feeling lonely at home. Dad nods slowly. Yeah, maybe. He tries to smile, but it fades quickly. I'm sorry if the tension is affecting you too. I want us to be a happy family. I want you to feel safe here. Tears burn the back of my eyes. He's so sincere, so clueless to the storm raging around him. I force a nod. I know. He squeezes my shoulder gently, then stands. Let's call it a night. I watch him ascend the stairs, shoulders slumped. My chest aches with the urge to scream the truth at him. But fear stabs at me again. Am I ready for what happens next? Once he knows? Later, as midnight nears, I lie in bed, staring at the glowing screen of my phone. I can't sleep. The confrontation with Mom, the messages from Rajan, and Dad's quiet heartbreak all swirl in my mind. My heart feels too heavy. I open my chat app, scrolling through contacts. Maybe I should talk to someone, a friend from school who might understand. Finally, I land on the name of my closest friend, Anil. We've known each other since we were kids. He knows me better than anyone else, but I've never told him about Mom's cheating. I didn't want to tarnish my family's reputation or burden him with my mess. But tonight, I can't hold it in. My fingers move almost by themselves. Me? 12:03 a.m. Hey, you awake? A minute passes before the reply. Anil? Yeah, playing games on my phone. What's up? I take a deep breath. This is it, someone outside the family, the first person I'll confide in. Me? I need to tell you something, but promise not to share with anyone, okay? It's serious. Anil? Of course. You can trust me. I stare at the text, tears prickling my eyes. Then, in a long paragraph, I pour out the basics, how I discovered Mom's affair with Kamal years ago, how it's escalated, the multiple men, how I'm torn about telling Dad. My thumbs tremble, but I force the words onto the screen. After hitting send, I feel a wave of panic. What if he thinks my family is messed up? What if he judges me? Seconds pass, turning into a full minute, then 2. I see that Anil is typing, then stopping, then typing again. My stomach is in knots. Finally, the messages come through. Anil. Wow. I'm so sorry. I had no idea you were going through all that. Anil, are you okay? This sounds horrible. My eyes blur with tears of relief. He's not judging me. He's worried about me. Me? I'm not okay. I'm so angry. My mom's lying to my dad, and my dad is clueless. I feel stuck, like I'm betraying him by not telling him. But telling him would destroy our family. Anil replies quickly. Anil, have you confronted your mom? Me? Yes. She threatened me not to tell Dad. She's acting like I don't understand marriage, but she's the one sneaking around behind his back. Anil, that's so messed up. You shouldn't have to carry this alone. I exhale shakily. That's exactly what I needed to hear. Someone acknowledging it's not fair that I'm in this position. Anil, do you want me to do anything? My parents might know a good counselor. Or, if you just want a place to crash sometime, I can talk to them. His kindness makes the tightness in my chest loosen just a bit. But I also know I'm not ready to blow this open and have multiple adults find out. Not yet. Me? Thanks. Maybe I just need you to listen for now. If I decide to tell my dad, can you support me? Anil, of course. Always. If your mom is messing around with multiple men, it's not just about heartbreak. It can get dangerous. Don't let them intimidate you. I think of Rajan's texts, the thinly veiled threats about families falling apart. A chill crawls up my spine. Me? Yeah. I won't let them scare me. We exchange a few more messages, and he reassures me that no matter what, I'm not alone. Eventually, I say goodnight, feeling a fraction lighter. There's a new conviction in me, a sense that if things get worse, I have someone to turn to. It's past 1 in the morning when I finally put my phone aside. I stare at the ceiling, still wide awake. That's when I hear a soft noise from downstairs. A floorboard creaks. My heart jumps into my throat. Mom and Dad's bedroom is at the other end of the hall. If either of them is up, I should have heard them move down the hallway. Slowly, I sit up in bed and listen. Another faint shuffle. I slip out from under the covers and pad barefoot to my door. Opening it a crack, I peer into the dark corridor. The house is still, the only light a thin glow from the kitchen. Someone must have turned on the little lamp we keep on the counter. Carefully, I tiptoe downstairs, each step seeming louder in the nighttime hush. At the bottom of the stairs, I see a figure standing by the window. My heart pounds until I realize it's Mom. She's wearing a robe, her phone pressed to her ear. When she senses my presence, she whirls around, eyes wide. For a moment, we lock eyes. She doesn't say a word into the phone, just ends the call abruptly. The tension crackles like electricity. "What are you doing?" I whisper. She sets the phone on the table, crossing her arms defensively. "I could ask you the same. Why are you sneaking around?" I grit my teeth. I heard a noise. Thought maybe someone broke in. My gaze flicks to her phone. "Who were you talking to?" She tightens the belt on her robe. "That's none of your business." My voice trembles with anger. "Right. I forgot. Everything's none of my business. Even though you're wrecking my dad's life, and possibly other families too." Her jaw works, and her eyes flash with some emotion I can't fully identify. Fear, guilt, anger. "You have to stop this," she says quietly, stepping closer. "Your father is already suspicious. He's not stupid. Do you really want him to have a meltdown when he finds out how obsessed you are with this? How you're—" I cut her off with a scornful laugh. "Me? You think Dad's meltdown will be about me? He'll be furious at you, Mom, for lying, for betraying him. Not me." She exhales shakily, and for a heartbeat, I see tears well up in her eyes. "I never wanted this," she whispers. "I never wanted to hurt anyone. Then why are you doing it?" I ask, voice breaking. She presses a hand to her forehead. "Because life is complicated. Your father, he's a good man, but we've grown apart. I'm not excusing what I've done, but you can't imagine how lonely I've been." I stare at her, my emotions churning. Part of me wants to feel sympathy, to acknowledge she's an adult with complex needs. But the overriding sensation is betrayal. She's not just hurting Dad. She's also endangering our entire family life. "That doesn't justify what you're doing," I say firmly. She closes her eyes, tears escaping. "I know," she says quietly, "but I'm not ready to face the consequences." We stand in silence for several beats, the soft hum of the refrigerator filling the void. A million emotions rush through me. Anger, sadness, a flicker of pity. Finally, she whispers, "Please just give me time. Don't say anything to your father. Not yet." My throat is tight. "And in the meantime, you keep sneaking around, talking to Kamal and Rajan?" She drops her gaze, unable to respond. I realize that as desperate as she is to maintain this twisted status quo, she doesn't have an exit strategy. She's stuck in her own web of lies, afraid to face Dad's wrath or the destruction of her reputation. I want to scream at her, to demand she come clean, but I also see the fear in her eyes, a fear that's not only about Dad but about her entire life crashing down. So I say nothing. I turn on my heel and climb the stairs, each step feeling heavier than the last. Behind me, I hear a quiet sob, then the click of her phone as she presumably sends a text to whoever she was talking to in the middle of the night. Back in my room, I crawl into bed, tears sliding silently down my cheeks. The emotional weight of this secret feels crushing. Yet a part of me wonders if, despite all this pain, I should give Mom a small window to fix things on her own. Or do I owe it to Dad to tell him immediately? Either way, I can't shake the sense that time is running out. Each day, the lies compound, and Dad edges closer to discovering the truth on his own. And when he does, nothing will ever be the same again. I didn't sleep at all after catching Mom whispering into her phone in the dead of night. My mind spun with guilt and anger, torn between pity for her fear and a growing certainty that Dad deserved to know the truth. By the time dawn light slipped through my curtains, I'd made a decision. I wouldn't wait forever. If Mom didn't come clean soon, I would. When I finally emerged from my room, I found Mom already awake, sipping coffee at the kitchen table. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes. Dad, in his usual routine, was tying his shoelaces by the front door. "Morning," he said to me quietly. "You look tired. Everything all right?" I forced a nod. "Yeah, just couldn't sleep." He grimaced sympathetically. Then he turned to Mom. "I might be home a bit later tonight. We have a corporate order to fill at the bakery." She inclined her head without meeting his eyes. "Sure, that's fine." I could sense the hurt in him, that same subtle ache. He wanted her to protest, to ask if he could come home earlier. But she said nothing, her thoughts clearly miles away. Once Dad left, I grabbed some cereal and made to retreat upstairs. But Mom stopped me with a hand on my arm. Her eyes glistened with tears. "Please sit." Reluctantly, I sank into the chair beside her. My cereal turned soggy as we stared at each other in tense silence. Finally, she said, "I'm sorry for how I spoke to you last night." Her voice trembled, and I believed she felt remorse. But the memory of her threats and the messages from Rajan still burned in my mind. "If you're sorry," I replied carefully, "then do the right thing. Stop lying to Dad." She swallowed hard, fiddling with her phone. "It's not that simple." I let out a bitter laugh. "Yes, it is. You're either faithful or you're not. If you don't want to be with him, leave. But this is cruel." Tears welled in her eyes. "I don't want to hurt him, and I don't want to lose you, or this family." "Then end it," I insisted. "All of it. Kamal, Rajan, everyone. Now." She said nothing. Her silence spoke volumes. She wasn't ready. Or maybe she didn't believe she could walk away from the tangled mess she'd created. Anger flared up in me, but I also saw the desperation in her eyes. She felt trapped by her own choices or by the fear of facing the consequences. Finally, she whispered, "Give me a day. One day to set things right." I stared at her uncertain. Could she really fix this in a single day? It seemed impossible, but I felt a surge of hope. "All right," I said, my voice strained. "One day. But if you don't—" She nodded quickly. "I know." That afternoon, I found myself home alone, Dad at the bakery and Mom allegedly out tying up loose ends. My heart thumped with dread. I tried distracting myself with television and social media, but none of it stuck. I was so absorbed in my own thoughts that the doorbell startled me. When I opened the door, Kamal stood there again. A flicker of anger raced through me. "She's not here," I snapped immediately, ready to slam the door. But he wedged his foot in before I could shut it. He looked agitated, sweat beading on his brow. "Wait, I need to talk to you." "Leave," I said, voice low. "I don't want to hear anything from you." He exhaled sharply. "Listen, I know you're upset about me and your mother, but it's more complicated than you." "Stop," I hissed, my hands trembling. "You ruined your own marriage to chase after my mom, and now you're all playing with my dad's life." Kamal frowned, his voice dropping. "You have no idea how lonely your mother was. Your father, he's a good man, but he leaves her alone. We never meant to hurt anyone." "You hurt everyone." My anger boiled over. And if you don't back off, I'm telling my dad everything. Kamal clenched his jaw. What if your father finds out you've known for years and said nothing? You think he'll be happy with you? I froze. The shot was well aimed. My greatest fear was Dad's betrayal turning into anger toward me for keeping silent. My grip on the door tightened. Kamal's eyes softened just a touch, like he realized he'd gone too far. This is not your burden, he said more gently. We're adults. Let us handle it. I shoved his foot away. Handle it then? I snapped. Because I've given Mom 1 day to fix this. If she doesn't, I'm done protecting any of you. The threat hung in the air. Kamal stepped back, jaw working. He gave a curt nod, turned on his heel, and marched off. My heart pounded as I slammed the door. So many secrets, so many lies, and now everyone was scrambling to hold on before the entire house of cards collapsed. Mom returned around 4 in the afternoon, looking wrung out. Her eyes were puffy, as though she'd been crying. The first thing she said when she walked through the door was, I ended it with Kamal. My breath caught. Really? Part of me wanted to believe her, but trust had long since been broken. She nodded, setting her purse down and easing onto a chair. We met, we talked. I told him I can't do this anymore, that I'm choosing our family. A conflicted mix of relief and skepticism churned in me. What about the others? I asked, my voice tight. She nodded slowly. I sent messages to everyone, told them I'm cutting ties, that what we had was a mistake. Tears welled in her eyes. It's over. I inhaled a shaky breath. So what now? She gave a sad smile. Now I try to fix things with your father. She shook her head. I'm not sure how yet, but I'm going to try. Part of me felt lighter, but a deeper sense of dread remained. Would these men really back off that easily? And how was Mom going to face Dad without him sensing something was off? That night, Dad arrived home, shoulders slumped as usual. However, something about his demeanor was different. He seemed more distant, his gaze more scrutinizing. Mom greeted him warmly, attempting a normal hug, but he tensed. You okay? She asked softly. He stepped back, searching her face. I'm not sure, he said. I watched from the sidelines, my stomach roiling. He glanced at me, then turned back to her. A few people have hinted that you've been unhappy, he said carefully. Rajan for one. He texted me today, asked if I'd noticed changes in you. Mom blanched. Rajan texted you? She shot me a worried look. Dad nodded. Yes. Said he was worried about your mental health. That you seemed anxious. He paused, his gaze flicking between us. Are you anxious, Maya? My mother forced a smile that looked more like a grimace. I've been stressed. It's not easy being alone so often. Dad studied her. I can understand that. But is there something more? Something I should know? Her eyes brimmed with tears. No, she lied, voice trembling. I promise it's just stress. I expected Dad to let it go. He often did, out of love or trust. But this time, he pressed his lips into a thin line, clearly unconvinced. He walked past her toward the kitchen, without another word. Around midnight, I woke to muffled sobs from down the hall. Concerned, I got out of bed and found Mom in the living room, tears streaming down her cheeks. She motioned for me to sit. What's wrong? I whispered, though I suspected the answer. Her eyes flicked to the darkened staircase. Your dad knows something is wrong. He confronted me again before bed. He said he feels like I'm hiding a huge secret. My throat went dry. What did you say? She swallowed hard. I denied it, but he didn't believe me. She broke down, covering her face with her hands. I can't live like this anymore. A part of me softened, seeing her genuine remorse. Another part simmered with frustration. She'd created this mess. Maybe it's time you tell him the truth, I said gently. Let him hear it from you. Mom shook her head frantically. He'd leave me. He'd hate me. I touched her shoulder. He might, but he deserves to know. And you deserve a chance to rebuild or move on. Living like this is killing you both. She sobbed for a moment, then nodded weakly. You're right. I'll tell him tomorrow, before he hears it from someone else. My heart pounded. A sense of dread and relief mingled. Tomorrow, the family would change forever. True to her word, Mom asked Dad to come home early. I stayed in my room, fear and anticipation swirling. I heard the front door open, Dad's footsteps in the hallway. Mom called him to the living room. Minutes ticked by, silent as tombs. I couldn't bear it anymore, so I crept halfway down the stairs, straining to hear. I caught snippets, Mom's shaky voice, Dad's sharp intake of breath. I never wanted to hurt you. I was so lonely. Her words trembled with tears. Dad's voice, nearly unrecognizable in its wounded anger, cut through. You betrayed me. With Kamal? With Rajan? How many others? My God, Maya? A crash echoed. Perhaps Dad knocking over a chair. My pulse raced. I wanted to run down, to protect him from the pain or to comfort him. But I stayed frozen, tears burning my eyes. Mom's sobs filled the silence. I ended it, I swear. I was going to tell you. 3 years, he growled, voice shaking. You let this go on for 3 years? You lied every day? She tried to speak, but he barked, don't touch me. I heard him pacing, breathing heavily. And you let our child witness this? You made, he choked off, too furious or hurt to continue. My heart sank. He'd figured out that I must have known something. Everything I feared was unraveling in real time. Mom's anguished whisper. Please, you have to forgive me. I was lonely. I needed affection. You needed to talk to me, Dad shot back. Or get counseling. Anything but this. His footsteps thundered, and I realized he was marching toward the stairs. Panicked, I backed up, but it was too late. He appeared on the landing, eyes red-rimmed, and froze when he saw me. Our gazes locked, and I saw heartbreak carved into every line of his face. Did you know? He asked quietly. Time seemed to slow. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. I nodded, tears slipping free. He took a shaky breath. For how long? I swallowed hard. Since I was 13. My voice quavered with shame. I'm sorry, Dad. He closed his eyes, his whole body trembling. Why didn't you tell me? I let out a choked sob. I was scared. I didn't want to break your heart. I kept hoping she'd stop, but it only got worse. A flash of pain tore across his face. He reached out, and I thought he might hug me, but he stopped short, hand trembling. Oh, God! Mom appeared behind him, tears streaming. Arun, please don't blame our child. Blame me? He rounded on her, voice raw. I do blame you, but I'm hurt that my own child couldn't trust me enough to tell me. I felt as though I was sinking into quicksand, guilt clawing at my chest. I'm so sorry, Dad. He turned away, fists clenched. I need space, he managed, and strode downstairs, snatched his car keys from the table, and left. A moment later, the front door slammed, the car engine revving as he drove off into the night. Silence swallowed the house. Mom sank onto the couch, sobbing into her hands. I stood numbly on the stairs, tears pouring down my cheeks. Everything had imploded, and yet, in some bizarre way, I felt relief that the truth was finally out. I joined her on the couch, heart pounding. What do we do now? She lifted her tear-streaked face. I don't know, she whispered. We wait. We see if he comes back. Fear coursed through me. He will, right? She looked at me, her eyes haunted. I hope so. Dad didn't come home that night. By morning, we learned he'd gone to stay with a cousin. The bakery was still operating. He went in early, avoided Mom's calls, and left phone messages for me saying he loved me, but needed time. The neighborhood buzzed with rumors. Kamal's wife threw him out when she discovered the affair. Rajan's wife threatened divorce. I heard that Dad refused to speak to either of them, cutting them out of his life. Our extended family began to whisper, ask questions. The web of deceit was unraveling, and with it came heartbreak for multiple households. Mom moped in her bathrobe, stifling sobs every hour. A part of me pitied her, but I couldn't absolve her. She'd set this chain reaction in motion. As for me, I texted Dad, apologizing again and again, pleading for a chance to talk face to face. But he only replied once, "I'm not mad at you. I just need space." 1 week later, days blurred in a haze of tension. Mom tried calling Dad, leaving tearful voicemails. He never answered. Meanwhile, I floated through the house, a ghost among ruins. I kept imagining Dad's heartbreak, the betrayal etched into his kind face. Would he ever come back? Then one evening, the sound of the front door opening jolted me from the couch. Dad stood there looking thinner, dark circles under his eyes. Mom rushed over, tears in her voice. "Arun!" He raised a hand, stopping her. His gaze flicked to me. "We need to talk, both of you." I sat at the table with them, nerves jangling. Dad spoke first, voice raw but resolute. "I've moved some of my things to an apartment near the bakery." Mom's eyes glimmered with tears. "So, you're leaving?" He nodded solemnly. "For now." His voice broke. "You violated my trust, Maya. I can't just pretend it's all okay. I need time." She reached for him, sobbing, but he pulled away gently. "I don't know if I can forgive this," he said, pain coloring each word. Then he turned to me. I braced for anger, but he cupped my cheek with surprising gentleness. "I'm sorry you had to carry such a secret. I wish you told me." Tears spilled down my face. I didn't want to destroy our family. His eyes welled, and he nodded. "I know." He drew a trembling breath. "I'm not blaming you, but I have to do what's right for me now." I felt a crushing sense of loss, but also relief that he didn't hate me. Mom's sobs filled the silence again. Dad stood up, gaze unreadable. "We'll figure out the next steps, maybe counseling, maybe not. But for now, I'll be at the apartment. I'll see you often," he told me softly. "I love you." "I love you too," I choked out, tears streaming down my cheeks. He turned to the door. Mom tried one last time to stop him, but he gently brushed her aside. A moment later, he was gone again. In the weeks that followed, our lives rearranged themselves into an uneasy new reality. Dad lived in a small apartment near the bakery. He worked longer hours to cope with heartbreak and to distract himself. Gradually, he allowed me to visit, and we'd watch TV together, or he'd teach me new bakery recipes. We didn't talk much about Mom, but every now and then he'd say, "I'm trying to forgive. It's just hard." Mom spiraled for a while, grief and regret consuming her. She cut off all contact with Kamal Rajan and every other man she'd entangled. I often heard her crying late at night, sometimes on the phone with her sister. She began therapy, a counselor who urged her to understand why she felt so lost and betrayed in her marriage. Over time, Mom admitted to herself that she had problems she'd never faced, resentments she'd buried. I struggled with lingering guilt and the sense that I'd failed to protect Dad. Yet I also felt a strange freedom in no longer being the keeper of secrets. I started seeing a school counselor to talk through the trauma. My friend Anil remained my confidant, reminding me that I wasn't responsible for my mother's choices. It took months, but Dad and Mom eventually found themselves in the same room for a counseling session. As far as I know, they talked through the betrayals, the loneliness, and the resentment that fueled it all. Whether they'd remain married or not was unclear. Some days, Dad hinted he might try to forgive. Other days, he spoke of divorce. Mom, for her part, seemed ready to do anything to repair the damage, but she understood that real trust might never be fully restored. Nothing was the same, but in a strange way, we each found a version of peace. Dad learned to place boundaries and look after himself, not just devote everything to the bakery. Mom confronted her own unhappiness and sought professional help, rather than escaping into secret affairs. I learned that honesty, though painful, was vital, and that some secrets do more damage in the dark. We were no longer the perfect family on a quiet street. Our neighbors talked, and gossip fluttered around. Yet in the wreckage, we carved out a path to continue as individuals, and perhaps one day, we'd find a healthier relationship with each other, whatever shape that might take. I still visit Dad on weekends at his apartment, help in the bakery, and sometimes come home to see Mom. The tension is there, but also a flicker of hope that maybe, as we all confront the truth instead of hiding it, we can rebuild something genuine. It won't be easy. It won't be quick. But at least the secrets no longer rule our lives. And that, despite the heartbreak, is the beginning of something real.